how is spirituality, in your understanding, like important, a resource, like in our everyday life, but also in our healing journey, coming back to before, when the individual has its own success story in healing itself, then it becomes like running a marathon. But I feel that just opening the context often is speeding up the healing process so much, but that often entails also or includes like a much deeper connection to the deeper than the everyday. For many
Mm.
people, that's naturally opening up in that process when we open up that box of the individual. So maybe you can speak a bit to your experience when in your healing work,
Mm.
how what kind of, and also how you speak to like a very ingrained and it's changing a bit now, but a very ingrained scientific separation from that context.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
it sounds like there are two. There's somewhere spirituality, there's scientific objectivity, scientific
Right.
experimentation, and
Right.
insight. And like, yeah, so that
Yeah.
maybe you speak a bit to that.
Let me speak to that a bit and why I feel, sometimes we conflate spirituality for the supernatural. And I feel the
Yeah.
supernatural is possibly the most unfortunate word in the history
Hmm.
of words. It's very unfortunate. I've told a story a long time ago of Halley's Comet. And I think I read this when I was a teenager. Um, I think it's Halley's Comet. And who's the guy? Haley? I know his name is Haley, but I forget his first name. Um, but this was invoked when he started to speak. Um, there was a time when comets were interpreted as angels in flight in Europe, right? In Christian Europe,
Hmm.
right? Oh, that's an angel. It's that's an angel delivering the word of the Lord. It's it was easier to think of comets that way. And then these dastardly astronomers started to try to interpret the stars, the heavens. And one in question um, gave a date for when the comet would return because he had studied the cycles. And he said, on this day, in this year, a comet will come. And everyone, it became, I think at this time, based upon this reading I had many years ago, it became this feverish attempt. It became a debate between religion and faith, faith and science, or the idea of the supernatural, or a world where nature needs no God, right? Which is a false dichotomy, but that's where I'm heading to. So Haley didn't live to see his comet return, but when it returned, it kind of broke something, right? Because if it can be predicted, then it's not an angel in flight. Then there's no need for God. Then what do we do about the supernatural? Then the church is in crisis because in their own schema, a world that we can speak with and communicate with is not a world where God is required. It's just a machine, right? And I think it's a false dichotomy. It's a broken binary here. Um, the supernatural is unfortunate because it kind of offers us only two options: a world that is intensely mechanistic and therefore amenable to scientific description and exploration and control and prediction, or the world where anything goes because God decides it. There are no laws per se, because he can just tinker with stuff and get things done the way he wants. Both both do injustice to an animist world that is open-ended, that doesn't require a Gandalf to make it happen, and a world that is in itself spiritual because it is not finished, right? The unfinishedness of the world is what is where the spiritual lies for me. Where was I going with this, brother? Your question was about
The
I just fell into
dichotomy.
Haley.
Yeah, the
No,
dichotomy, the
yeah,
binary between science and spirit.
yes. But before that, you wanted me to speak to something that I was really excited to speak about it, and I just traipsed off. I get lost very easily in these songs. You wanted me to speak to something. Was it just the dichotomy, the binary,
Yeah, the
in a way?
binary and yeah, right. And how we are living in a world that is defined by this a little bit by this binary because the language of the world became science. And then there's
Yes,
it seems like a two-ness with the whole spiritual dimension. And how you
yes,
speak to that, that was yeah, how
yes. So in that sense, the spiritual for me is the integrity of and the fidelity of the relationships we have with a world that is unfinished, right?
mm,
It is not the it's not a quality of distance. This is my Christocentric heritage. The
mm,
quality of a distant God who needs to be with us. No, it's the apophatic quality of matter. That is, if you could if you could put matter under a microscope and finally describe it, then maybe there's no need for the spiritual. But that even the microscope is a measuring, every measurement is a cutting device. Every measurement we make cuts out something. We don't see the world as it is. Our bodies, and maybe this is really where I wanted to go with this, that our bodies are, are so large and complex and territorial. And this is what the modern misses out on. It kind of, like I said earlier, it wants to stabilize us within a sentence, within the grammar of presence, a metaphysics of presence. And so it wants to put a box around and say, this is what it means to be Thomas. And this is what it means to be Ben or Sherry. Um, but our bodies are doing things at other levels. And let me just speak to that a little bit, brother. Yeah, I don't know if you read this report that in on Mount Fuji or Fiji in Japan, not Fuji, Fiji. Mount Fiji, is that in Japan? I think that's in Japan. Well, it's considered a pristine mountain. Where the clouds hang low and it's come up in images and it's beautiful. Sorry, my jet lag brain is working up. Um, they found microplastics, right, in those clouds. Um, and in caves that have been shut out from public participation for decades. They found microplastics as well. They shut it out. They closed the doors. No human interference. And yet we are still there. It's to me, that is the spirituality of the nuclear human. That even when we don't go there, our bodies are participating in some dimension with turtles, with mountains, with hidden caves. We are spread out that way. Now, many might say, what has microplastics got to do with depression? Or well, I'm trying to say that our bodies are not this. This is not the body. Our bodies are a lot more molecular and micro looking than what appears. So spirituality is the invisibility of what appears. It is how we are in touch with worlds and are in conversation with dimensions that don't show up in our healing paradigms or even how we think about justice. So it's always going to be inadequate if you send someone out with a clean bill of health back into a world that co-produces the very conditions that gave birth to the crisis. If you say, oh, you're good now because you've done the work, right? But you put them back into a socio-materiality that is like a, what's that wheel? where the rap goes
Samsara.
on.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like a wheel that co-produces and churns the same kind of problematic situations. Then we're going to keep coming back. You're going to keep the psychotherapeutic context is going to be, unfortunately, the manufacture of clients.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I love this, like what you said about the body also, that the view that we currently hold about the body and the nervous system, like that the
Yeah.
nervous system is this anatomic structure that
Yes, that's the
looks like,
nervous.
yeah,
There it
yeah,
is.
that's here and that's your property and only bios living in there and that's the close versus,
Yes.
oh, that nervous system is a biocomputer. We are all the living record of humanity's history, and
Mm,
it's
mm,
and
mm.
yeah, this is so. And again, like I feel when we speak, I the whole time I have this feeling of expansion, like I have this feeling of breathing and oxygen, and I
Yes.
have this sense of more freedom. So
Yes.
that when I listen to the open context, not just the focus here, the open context, then
Yes.
feels to me so much richer, so much more open, and also
Yes.
it's, and at least that's coming up for me when I listen. Then my preformed set of how the world might be actually needs to leave, and I'm much more called into an ongoing relational presence, like
Yes.
an ongoing relating with what is, because
Yes.
that's the source of insight.
Yes.
And but that's a very different thing than that is being taught in many places, because the
Yes.
preformed idea about life is much more prevalent than
Yeah.
being in the fluidity of a relational data transfer all the time.